I have Justin Franson here with Jeremy Niednagel, the son of Jonathan Niednagel, one of my favorite authors, Brain Types. You know, there's websites braintypes.com, and I have a surprise for you today.
All right.
This is when I first heard about Jonathan Niednagel. Is Sunday, August 9th, 1998.
Wow, that's old.
1998, the front page of the LA Times sports section. Yeah, I saved it. But it talks about that brain matters. And while most athletes possess great physical skills, in the mind, it's a mind that separates the best from the rest. So it goes over what Jonathan Niednagel, aka the brain expert, says everyone has a preference of the pairings. And he goes on to type all these top performers, from the Joe Montanas, Greg Maddux, the Michael Jordans, and the Jack Nicklauses, on to actually telling us in advance, without telling the person, who would be the biggest success, Peyton Manning versus Ryan Leaf, who would be one of the bigger failures in the history of the NFL. And he really predicted that. And that's how powerful brain typing is. So we're so excited to have you on, as you're really driving the ship, but with your dad now, and just Jeremy's really taken over a lot of the aspects of it. They're currently working with which teams?
The Boston Celtics and the Philadelphia Eagles. So football and the NBA.
Football and NBA, two of the biggest teams. Did you win a Super Bowl ring?
I don't think they sent us one, actually. I don't think they did.
You got one.
We got a thank you letter, but not a ring.
They actually won the Super Bowl, and I know the Patriots had a different brain type person that they were working with, and Niednagel's won over theirs. Yeah.
Okay.
So pretty interesting stuff, you guys. This goes way back, but Dean Brittingham, my mentor, we had Abby Spears, who's a professional tennis player for years, and you were big with which tennis coach?
Vic Braden.
Vic Braden for many years. So their history in sports is just legendary. The teams, the athletes that they've worked with, it's beyond impressive. And so I got your book. He's actually brain typed me and my family. Is that about right?
Right.
So this is his comprehensive report on my brain, and I'm considered the strategist. So, but anyhow, you guys, he does brain typings for families, which has been so helpful for me and my daughter and my wife, and our dynamic of cultivating the best out of her and us. And so I want to turn over to you and have you talk with that big intro and that deep rooted history in sports and family work. How did your dad and you guys get into it, and how did you grow to be so gifted in it as well?
Well, that's a big question with a long answer, but the short of it is that my father and I both have a wiring, a predisposition to see little nuances in people. And years ago, almost 30 years ago, my father was studying people for his work, psychometric profiles, going through the different methods of understanding people, and he found one particular assessment method to be most helpful, which was developed by Carl Jung and then later by Isabel and Catherine Briggs Myers. And basically, he picked up that information and took it a step further, which is where we are today. He coached over 50 youth teams, over 600 children over the span of about 20 years. And in that process, he saw in children character traits that he felt were consistent with the Myers-Briggs or the Jungian model that used to be called personality typing, or Myers-Briggs, whatever you want to call it. But we now call it brain typing because we know there's a genetic basis for it, and that we can actually differentiate between people based on phenotypical expression. So what we see can tell us what's going on in the brain.
Wow.
And so really we've gone from what we used to think was malleable, the personality type, to what we now know is hardwired in who you are from birth. So, but you asked how it came about. Really, it was a span of 30 years, just a lot of micro progressions. And my father was he is a stickler for seeing little nuances in people, and so he started to add those up and to quantify them and to use that earlier model to build upon where we are today. So we're not all that impressive, but our information is, and it's so helpful. So we're the kind of people that will, be able. We're the students of. We like to study people, and that's why we've gotten to where we are. We both have the same wiring, and my grandmother has it, and her mother had it actually. So it's genetic and it's hereditary, and it's fascinating how it works out.
And it's how you're brain typed. But I have to interject. He is very impressive, and so is his dad. And what they do, their information is phenomenal. So let's talk about my brain type. And just dive into what it looks like with someone with a brain type. So I am a strategist, right?
Okay,
what does that mean?
That's the nickname we give you, the strategist, formerly called the ENTP. We've changed the lettering to be more descriptive of brain activity, but we also call you the 13. We've come up with a number system, 1 through 16, just to make it easy for people. And so you're a 13, which means that you have basically. Brain typing addresses two parts of the whole person. Okay, so there's your personality, and then there's your blueprint, your DNA makeup for who you are. And so we like to say it's the bifurcation of the total person, addressing both aspects, because there's who you are from birth, nature, and then there's who you are, how you've been developed over time, your nurture. And so when you say, who am I, what's my brain type, I can tell you what that is, but it's also important to note what's happened since you were born. And so what brain typing does is it tells you your hardwiring, and then it helps you to be able to differentiate between what has been learned over time.
Like essentially a persona.
Yeah, a persona, exactly. So that's it, your persona versus brain type. And both are meaningful, but we like to put an estimated percentage at something like 60-40 brain type over persona. So your persona is a huge component in who you are, but it's a smaller part of who you are. So when I say you're a 13 or an ENTP or an FCIR, which is our terminology now, that means a lot. It puts you in a category, but it doesn't mean you're not unique. And you're very unique. 40% of you is just unique to you. Something like that is what we believe, the percentage roughly. But so there's a lot we can tell you about how you'll be. We can predict and project a lot, but then there's another component which is unique just to you. So brain typing doesn't try to answer all the questions about a person and why they are the way they are, but it answers the main motivational and the main what am I trying to say? It basically governs who you are. If you have a normal brain, it explains your normal behavior for the most part.
Awesome.
So not everybody has a normal brain, but assuming that we're all working well, then yes, that's what we can tell you.
So I'm more front brain, so more of an extrovert.
That's right. So you're front brain dominant, which means you like to make things happen. You don't like to sit around. You have a lot of energy in the day. You like to plan, think ahead, usually. There's a lot of misconceptions about front and back brain, or E and I, extroversion, introversion. But overall, it has to do with brain activity, which usually translates into being more talkative too, and more outgoing or more energetic in that way. And then so we have the front and the back, and anyone who studies the brain can tell you the different traits that go along with each. But secondarily, you're intuitive or conceptual, which means you're bigger picture. Your head's not in the clouds necessarily, but you're at least seeing the big picture, and everything you do, you're seeing possibilities and conceiving new ideas.
Yeah.
And it's easy for me to talk to you because I'm actually almost your opposite, so not everybody is that way. Thirdly, you're thinking, or you're into inanimate things of life. Like, you appreciate people and in relationships, but really your brain is dealing with concepts and principles and how things work and why things are the way they are, and looking at it a little more analytically and systematically. That's the way the thinking mind works. That's the way the inanimate brain works. So inanimate versus animate. And then lastly, when I said P, or right brain dominant, which is R, that's so the ENTP or the FCIR, your last facet has to do with whether you're right or left brain dominant. And there's so much that comes from that, and how the right or left brain dominance basically governs the first three facets of who you are in a big way. So also handedness has a lot to do with whether that's enhanced or restricted too. So if you're right-handed or left-handed, that will also be a big input. So I could talk a long time about your type, but in a nutshell, yeah, your type actually makes the world go round, and is very productive in society, and is very has the most aptitude, arguably, in today's structures. The way society is today, your type tends to run things.
And then how about sports-wise? So I consider myself a decent athlete. I ended up getting hurt, so I didn't play tennis in college like I want to do, or the next level.
Yeah, so your type is not necessarily the most gifted with your motor skills, but you have a great mind, which can usually aid in athletics. So if you start early, then you can have the motor skill proficiency that you need to be great in any sport. But your mind would be your greatest asset as an athlete. And actually, because of today's sports have become so complex, and the offenses and the defenses, well, if we're talking professionally. But anyway, I was going to say your type rises to the occasion with more complex sports. And so we even see that in the professional sports today are not what they used to be 30 years ago. So your type has actually found a lot of prominence in today's professional sports world. And yeah, so
awesome. Now, how about what is the most gifted out? Like, what's a Michael Jordan brain type look like, or a Tiger Woods brain type?
Yeah, well, it just depends on what the sport requires. And there's so many facets that go into success. So Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods are very different actually, and yet they're both dominant in their sports. So that tells you a lot. So it really depends on the position and what's required, and whether you need a leader in that position or not, or whether you need intensity and you need tenacity, or whether you can be more free-flowing and fluid like Tiger Woods. His swing was the model for the last 15-20 years because of how smooth and loose and he is, and that's not something that Michael Jordan could replicate, even though they're both great athletes. Yeah. They both have different motor skills, and they both have different how they manage those skills. It's very different. So if I were to name the top athletes in each sport, they might not even be the same brain type. So that tells you a lot about how it's specific to what's required in the sport as far as what types excel and which other types have to work harder at excelling.
So are like a Tiger Woods, because we just had the duo between Phil Mickelson and Tiger, are they a similar brain type?
They're actually opposite.
They're opposite. Oh, that's crazy.
Total polar opposite, yeah. Except Mickelson's left-handed, so he's a little more fluid than he would have otherwise been if he golfed right-handed. So they both have that fluidity about them, that looseness that can get them far in golf. But other than that, they're totally opposite.
Wow.
The way they think and the way they process information.
Now, how about a Kelly Slater, like one of the greatest surfers?
Yeah, dominant Kelly Slater. Yeah, well, he's your brain type, so that says a lot for you. Yeah, he is, and he's just been dominant. I don't know what to say about him. He's the Michael Jordan of surfing. So
yeah, definitely.
He I don't know what to say about him, honestly.
He's amazing.
Yeah, he really is.
Yeah, no matter, I like the water and gravitate towards that, and surfing as well. That's cool.
And surfing, it requires a lot of pain tolerance, and even getting up in the cold early and getting in the cold water before you become great. And that's something your type is really good at, is having a high pain tolerance and tuning out what's right in front of you in order to follow what's inside your mind and what you're trying to accomplish. And so a lot of top surfers have that ENTP or FCIR wiring, the 13, we call it, the number 13.
Wow, that's awesome. So you guys, that gives you a good idea of what's going on with this whole brain typing in the sports world. Now, as far as family-wise, share with us about families, and how do you go in and work the intricacies of a family, like with my wife and daughter. And we're actually all the same brain type, but that's not always the case.
Right. Well, everybody has a system with which they parent or understand their children, and what brain typing does is it gives you just a firm grip on why your children are behaving the way they are, so that you can then decide how you want to handle that. And we can assess children that are a year old. I've assessed my 5 children before they became 1 year old. And that's helped us to be able to have more forgiveness, more empathy, just know whether we're going to crush their spirit or not by, saying no to this or that, or how we need to treat them with kid gloves or more firmly, and just understanding how they are from a young age is invaluable. And that's where our heart is with helping people, is just helping with children, because it's such a big part of society. And so I'm not sure what else you asked on that point.
Yeah, just parenting wise, and how we can see what they're doing and how we respond to it.
Yeah, also you can project who they're going to become like in their latter years. So that's just so helpful to know that you've got this. It's almost like with any dog breed, you can know where they're going, and it's the same with brain typing with children, is that you can understand that what their interests will be likely when they're older. And so if you want to encourage them in that when they're younger, then it just saves a lot of heartache and headache, and it's more fluid that way to know what you've got. And it's usually a combination of mom and dad, since it's hereditary, but sometimes grandparents' genes are passed down and we see different anomalies. But brain typing is pretty predictive in that way with the heredity of the parents, passing down to the children. So.
Wow. Now, do you offer services where you actually can brain type people remotely?
We do, and you can send us a video or post it online privately or however you want to do it, but we do assessments regularly from all over the world where people send us video, and we can do all we need is about 5 minutes of good video footage, and we can usually assess a person's brain type and tell them all they need to know from that vantage point. Yeah.
Wow. And then what's the optimal age? I mean, if you're doing your kids before they're 1.
Yeah. We live with them, so we have them every day to watch and observe. If we don't know you that well, which is usually the case, then it just depends really, because some brain types are more outgoing, right? And so they'll show us more of who they are in a short interview, even if they're a little child, like an infant. We have done that where they're under a year old or so, but probably 3 years old or so is probably a safe area if we don't know you well and we only have a little bit to go on. But really, some brain types make themselves known very quickly, even just 6 months old. You can see a whole lot. And any parent knows what I'm talking about, that if you have several children, you know that even though they all come from the same mom and dad and they've had generally the same upbringing, they were different from the start. And there were so many little indicators that became more pronounced over time. And that's what we do, is we help you identify those little indicators, which will become bigger later.
I love it. And one of the things that I really prided myself on with our program, athleticism builds a whole brain. And when you start to develop more coordination, I know Jim Courier was one of Dean Britnam's clients, and when he was working with Dean, he jumped from 25 to top 5 in the world in a span of 9 months. And to have that brain type really open up and develop more coordination, more motor skills, more whole brain ambidexterity, it'll help get people to a higher level. So for me and my work, to work with these athletes and help cultivate that coordination to have them develop more connections from the brain to the body, to enhance even better brain types and have them be more gifted, well-rounded, and see those results has just been amazing for us.
That's great. Yeah, knowing what you need to do, that's a big part of brain typing too, is that you can help them get there, but just knowing if you have an idol or someone you emulate and that's better than you are, then you can differentiate between what your type is and what theirs is, and why they're excelling as they are, and so then you can know where you want to go. So I'm actually left brain dominant. Sports usually require right brain fluidity, so there are steps I can take, like that you know about, or others that can help me become more right brain dominant if I want to be good in a sport. So brain typing doesn't just tell you, it doesn't put you in a box and it doesn't say this is where you have to stay. It just says that this is where your gifts are, and if you want to branch out and get better, then you need to do some of these other things to balance the whole brain, like you've shared with me in the past, and what we tell people too.
I love it. I love it. Now, this book, Your Keys to Sports Success, and how many others have
a few others, written? Yeah, but most of it's word of mouth, really. My dad's not all that. He doesn't like to write a lot of books. He just likes to do individual stuff. He likes to go on a case-by-case basis and share with people in a customized way. That's really where our heart is just helping people. So anyway, yeah, we're more interested in helping people than we are in selling product, quite honestly. But we have materials that can help people.
Well, you have 5 kids to feed, so that's okay to ask for a purchase. But yeah. You guys, you can get this at braintypes.com and several of his other books, and they're fantastic. And you have a monthly...
We have a subscription service called BT Insider, which gives weekly articles about names in the news and what their brain types are and why it matters and why it makes sense. Yeah.
So he'll cover all the hot topics, just everything that's going on, and then you could dive in and understand why people responded in what way, and it all dives down to your brain types. How are you born, your 16 predisposed brain types, your personas that you've grown with, no matter how you were raised. And this is just absolutely some of my favorite information. For 3 years, I've been, Jeremy, you gotta come and get on, and I gotta talk to you because everyone needs to know this. And this is more like so many, the top guys in sports know it, but not a lot of families know it. And even athletes. We had one PGA golfer I worked with. He jumped up 90 spots on the PGA Tour in one season, probably one of the highest ranking improvements. And after brain typing him, we realized that he choked the hell out of the club. And the second he softened his hands, he just lit it up on the tour. And that was a lot of other stuff we did with him, balance-wise and coordination-wise. But literally that one cue, and when I told him that from his brain type, from reading the brain type, he looked at me like I was a ghost. I'm like, well, I didn't come up with it, this guy did. And that's just how well they know how you perform when you're under pressure. You know, some of the brain types squeeze and grip, and then you stop all the flow, and you want to stay fluid. That's where the Fred Couples has been so successful, because I know a lot of other golfers have the same brain type as he, but they'll end up being a warrior and wanting to push through it versus just relaxing and being fluid. And those are the keys to winning those championships and taking yourself to that elite #1 level where you just get in that flow.
Yeah, any experienced athlete knows that it seems like every week something else works for them, and it can be frustrating if you have a different solution every week that changes. And so I think what is important to note is that with brain typing, you can be sure that these tendencies you have are actually they're innate, and that's why you keep experiencing them, and it's not something else that's causing it. So you have all these solutions that you might have used over a year's time in your sport, but brain typing can help you pinpoint what are the ones that I really need to focus on. Because if you have too many swing thoughts or too many thoughts, it'll, paralysis by analysis, it'll hurt your game if you're being too conscious. So brain typing will help you just understand these are the things that that I need to focus on, and I don't have to be so frustrated that there's so many things that could be the problem. I want to know what is the problem so I can overcome it and get better. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's end on that. You guys, braintypes.com. Jonathan Niednagel is his father, who started. Jeremy Niednagel right here is taking over, and you guys give him a call. He will just make your life so much easier and allow you to go to the highest level ever. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Justin.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Good seeing you. Thanks for going beyond with us.